Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas.
And this week we are talking about matching your attorney with your goals. And of course, we mean the goals in your case.
Right. What your goals are, what your personal goals are.
Right.
Go back to the episode about the big giant why if you don't have any goals.
Yeah, I also referred somebody to the episode on do you want to be heard or do you want to win your case? And I think that's another good one to listen to if you're trying to figure out like what is your goal, because a lot of times the if you don't really think through and be intentional about what your goal is, then your emotions drive it, and that's usually the worst outcome.
That's true, and the attorney marketers know that.
Yes.
So that's how they get you in.
Right.
But I think a good cautionary tale. Tammy had a coaching client that hired an attorney to handle her, what was it, some kind of a settlement conference, or it was and the attorney was very aggressive.
Oh. Yeah, I was trying to bring to mind who you were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was one of my group clients, and she went into this settlement conference where they were trying to resolve custody, and she doesn't live in California, she lives in a different state. But anyway, they went in to try to resolve custody, and her ex-husband was there with his lawyer, who was a woman, and then she was there with her lawyer, who was a man. And so not really that makes a huge difference, but just to kind of give
because man or pig,
to give you the picture of the dynamic. Okay. And she said they went in, and she said her lawyer was just so unbelievably combative and aggressive. And, you know, she's worked really hard, and this is a difficult situation. There are some red flag issues. There are some concerns going on, and they have young children. And so she's worked really hard to try to be as reasonable, as amicable as she can while still protecting the kids and doing everything she needs. I mean, this client has she's almost like the picture perfect client, right? Because she really does internalize what I say, and she
is her case in California?
No, I just said that. And she tries to apply it, and all that kind of thing.
I'll take it.
So she goes in, and her attorney is really, she said that's the point at which she realized that they were completely working at cross purposes, to the extent that husband's attorney made some comment about how her and the wife were the only two that hadn't got a chance to say anything, because the two men were essentially arguing with each other the whole time.
Right.
And she just came out.
It became about the personality of the people rather than settlement.
Right. And so, you guys know I work a lot with people who have narcissistic exes and, high conflict exes and all that kind of thing. That's kind of become my area of expertise. And so in this situation, we were dealing with somebody that she sees at least as high conflict. Okay.
Right.
Now I'm not a therapist, and I don't know that he's diagnosed with anything or anything like that, but she sees him as high conflict.
So this party dragged her attorney into the conflict.
Correct. Or the attorney dragged him. I don't know. Yeah. But it essentially became this battle between the two men and their personalities. And so she said when she left there, she just suddenly had complete clarity that like this was not the attorney for her. And she's like, nice guy. He's done a good job to this point. And it wasn't anything like really specifically that he had done other than his behavior in this conference, where she realized,
right,
this is not the route I want this to go.
Right. And that goes to show my first point, which is that aggressive does not equal good.
Right. And that's something that people come to me with a lot. I've talked about, Thomas and I both run free Facebook groups, and I get a lot of inquiries every day from people of just little questions and can I help with different things? And a lot of times the question is, do you know any good aggressive attorneys in my area?
I know some bad aggressive attorneys.
Well, not just in our area, but like I get asked this across the state, across the nation. Right. Essentially, I get this question, or can you help me research attorneys in my area?
Yeah. Normally that people want somebody that's going to move their case forward.
Right.
And if that's what they mean by aggressive, okay.
Right.
I don't have any problem with that.
Right.
But attorneys, like everybody else, have different skill sets
And
personalities.
Uh-huh.
We have some attorneys here in North San Diego County that tend to have they identify so much with their client that they tend to get drawn into the conflict.
Right.
And you probably know who I mean, that one that's near. I don't want to mention her name.
Yeah.
Or his name.
Yeah. His or her name.
His or her name.
I don't really know who you're talking about. But
It starts with an A.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're giving more and more details while saying we shouldn't be talking.
We shouldn't
specifics.
We
so
shouldn't,
stop giving details.
Her name begins with a P.
You're ridiculous.
I mean, his name.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have a lot of attorneys. I always say, I think attorneys deal with this one of two ways. Either you're very sensitive and you very personally take on that client's situation to the point to where it keeps you up at night. And I mean, honestly, you have some of that in you. I think you're getting better the longer you practice, but I think especially in the very beginning, family law is very emotional and it takes you some time to kind of find that balance of how you're coping with the emotions of the client and everybody else involved.
That's true. When I was young, I was really bad. I used to use a lot of snarky language in my communications, a lot of sarcasm, because, I kind of have a quick wit and it can be harmful.
Right.
But I think
I'm sorry, before you go there, I said one of two ways. That's the first way. The second way is they completely shut down and they're completely devoid of any emotion, and they're just driving your case through the system procedurally.
Right. They're just a cog in the wheel.
Right. So
or
it's
a cog
usually,
in the machine, I should say.
It's usually one of those two methods of coping.
Right. So my skill set has evolved, certainly.
Right.
And I'm much older than I used to be. I'm 61 years old. And
gray hair.
And, I find that as I get older, I am better at being politic or being sensitive. For example, I'm very careful about how I communicate with opposing counsel.
Right.
I don't want to set off World War III. Because you have to understand that the other party is going to the first thing that counsel does when they get a letter from opposing counsel is they email it to their client.
Right. So you're inflaming the other party by your attorney writing some nasty letter. You're inflaming the other party in the case.
Right.
Which is going to polarize people even more.
And Tammy's comment notwithstanding, I personally think that my strongest suit is interpersonal in that way.
Yeah.
In that I do think a lot about what I say. I'm careful about what I say, and I'm fairly settlement oriented.
Yeah.
That is, I approach the system from the belief that the best case is a settled case.
Right. Which we understand is not always possible.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to litigate, right? I mean, that's just not always
sometimes,
possible.
Right.
But having
which I will do occasionally.
Right. But having been through this and seen the collateral damage of so many cases, people tend to think of the damage in terms of monetary, which we all know that's significant. But also there's collateral damage to your kids and your relationship with your ex, particularly if you have to co-parent. And those types of things can cause misery for years to come. I mean, I've got a couple people that I've helped and spoken to that 7, 8, 9 years of sheer and utter misery in their co-parenting relationship.
Right. And,
and that's the trajectory you don't want to be on.
And it's not necessary, and it can be inflamed by somebody who has this perception that they have to be aggressive to please their client.
Right.
And aggressive means that you're always looking for some stupid lawyer trick to
some gotcha.
Yeah, some gotcha, which I think makes practicing law a lot less fun. But
right.
But a lot of people really like that, and those are the people that you go to when it's time to fight.
Right.
Because sometimes the other party sometimes you're at impasse.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do except let the judge decide. And there, Now you want to find somebody who's a seasoned trial lawyer.
Right.
Not only that's seasoned and has experience, but somebody who really enjoys the work.
Yeah.
And
that's a rarity.
Yeah, we have another attorney, and I'll mention his name because we
do mention his name occasionally.
We mention his case, yeah, because I'm going to say something positive about him.
Right.
But this guy his name is Pierre Demerck.
Right.
And he really loves practicing law, and he loves the
battle
and the litigation, and super nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah, interpersonally extremely nice, but boy, he will put it to you.
You leave the courthouse feeling like, wow, I really like this guy. But he's jammed the case right where the sun doesn't shine.
Right. And he's in North San Diego, so if you're outside North San Diego, it is don't even. And he likes unusual and challenging cases. Like if we refer something to him, and it's this really like kind of outside the box kind of thing, and it's more challenging, that's the kind of thing that he likes.
Right. He once got an attorney fee award against a woman who claimed that she had been abused. I think the story was that she had been abused, and her story was in the newspaper, and the guy went to jail, and because he went to jail, he didn't have any money.
Right.
So I believe not. I don't want to get the story wrong because he's not here to.
Well,
correct
then
me.
maybe you shouldn't tell it. But.
No, but it's interesting because the law actually changed because of this case.
Right.
The legislature went and changed the need-based attorney fee law, but until that time, his client's in jail. She has money.
Right.
So on top of being the victim of all this stuff,
right,
and I'm not going to say what it was, I don't really know the case,
right,
but on top of that, she had to pay his attorney fee, and it was just a big, but that's the kind of thing, like he analyzes the statute, and he finds that little piece,
yeah. And actually, like Thomas said, after that, the case law was changed where if you have somebody who's found guilty of domestic violence, then
no attorney fee for you.
Then it affects spousal support and all. You shouldn't have to pay your abuser, So there was a change in the case law after that. So
or the statute.
The statute. I'm sorry, the wrong.
Statute, case, whatever.
Yeah, you're the attorney. You're here to correct that. So, but the point is that he's so good at what he does because he just loves it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I will tell you, I know almost no attorney other than him that feels that way about it. I mean, maybe a couple other people I could come up with that are that enjoy it a little bit, but not in the same way that he does. And I can certainly tell you, I don't think you enjoy it on that level.
Not really. I mean,
you've done it a lot. You know how to do it. Your experience, you can handle it. But it's not like something you go, oh, yay, let me go do this.
I'm good at it, but I'm driven by anxiety. Like I'm afraid I'm going to mess up, and that's why I'm very thorough and I read everything, and I spend hours preparing, and it's a lot of misery for me.
Right. And, so we've had the opposite where we've had somebody who like my coaching client we talked about earlier, who kind of realized, oh my goodness, my attorney's engaging in battle with my ex and this is going to be a fight and whatever. And she's like, I want to shift. I want to find somebody that's going to help me resolve this case. I don't want to spend a ton of money. I don't want to fight with the father of my children. I want to get as much resolved as I can. I'm willing to be reasonable. And then if you can't resolve it and you need to resort to that aggressive, really no holes barred kind of litigation, then okay.
Right.
But I think what happens is if for the client is if you go in and you have an attorney that's telling you everything you want to hear, that's not the attorney you want to hire.
So when you're interviewing it, if they're just your yes man.
Right.
Right, because that is going to lead you towards, at the end of the case, you're going to be wondering what hit you.
Right.
Especially with the fees.
Right.
And that is a common marketing technique.
It is.
In attorney circles is they know that people when they're getting into a divorce situation, they are frequently, I don't know, upset with the other party.
Yeah.
They're a little bit.
They dislike them.
They're a little bit cheesed, you know.
So yeah, and so what happens though is you walk in and you're like, I got this ex and he's doing this and he's doing that and blah blah blah.
Say, oh yeah, we'll get him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
like
what
that.
happens. Oh well, I'll tell you what we're doing. We're gonna file this. We're gonna file that. We're gonna get you some money. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do it. And then you're off to the races. Like you're on this runaway train of litigation because then they file and the court starts implementing all these deadlines on you, and you have suddenly turned full control of your case over to your lawyer and the court. And
Plus the other party also hires an aggressive attorney. Now you've got two that are battling each other.
right.
And they send nasty letters to each other and they bill you for it.
Right.
So you get billed when you receive when your attorney receives a nasty letter from the other attorney
And when they respond.
and when they respond.
Right. And what you want as a client to me is, not that you don't want someone that's sympathetic and understands what you're dealing with. I think that's true. And I think having been through it is a big piece of that in my eyes. I mean,
Right.
we know a lot of attorneys that practice family law that haven't been through divorce. And
Mhm.
I personally don't think I would want that because that person can't understand the reality of what I'm trying to deal with.
Right.
But the thing is that you have to trust that attorney and their advice. If you don't trust their advice, then you shouldn't be hiring them. But
Right.
you want somebody that's going to give it to you straight.
Right.
That's one of the things my clients say to me a lot. My coaching clients, you ask any of them, the
Right.
one thing they'll tell you about me, I don't sugarcoat it.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, and the problem is that if I'm sugarcoating it, I'm not doing you a service. I'm allowing you to go down this path that, like Thomas said, at the end of it, you're going to wonder what hit you.
Right.
And we see that a lot
Right.
in cases where people they like what their attorney's doing at the beginning, but then you get to the end and it's like, wow, really? This is the outcome? And I paid all that money and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's not satisfying. People think they're going to get some satisfaction out of the court process, and you almost never do.
Right. Well, what I would do when I'm interviewing attorneys, and I would interview a couple of them.
Yeah.
If you're doing that, if you're getting a divorce and,
Right.
and you feel you need an attorney, I would interview them. And usually when I do an initial client intake, mostly we talk about the case. And what I find baffling sometimes is that nobody's curious about me.
Right.
They never ask me what my attitude is.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you should do before you go into that meeting is think about what your goals are for that litigation. So sure, you want a status judgment, you want a divorce, and you want to be separated or away from that other person, but you also want to have happy kids. And you want to thrive financially after the divorce.
Right.
So put these things and then talk about your values, those values with the attorney, and see if that attorney is aligned to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if your answer is I'll open my checkbook and I want you to rip the other person to shreds, you can find an attorney that'll do that.
Right.
Then yeah, I mean, you just open your checkbook, you write the check, and they'll do whatever you want them to do.
Right.
But if you want to try to understand the process, be educated, it's like when we talk about Pierre, like, again, Pierre's great at what he does, but the one thing I'll tell you never get is Pierre's client. You don't get to talk to him usually unless you're in court. I mean, I'm not saying you never talk to him. I'm not inside his practice. I don't know how he does things, but I'm sure if a client calls and wants to schedule a phone call with him, they probably do that.
They probably get the assistant a lot of the time.
Yeah, but you almost always get the assistant. And why? Because he's always in court. He
Right.
can't, he's got a very high level of litigation practice, and therefore he is always in court.
Yeah.
And so your actual one-on-one interaction with him personally is very, very limited.
Well, I wouldn't say very, very.
Well, okay, is limited. Okay,
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be
Let's
negative.
not be
I-
hyperbole. Yeah, he's super, and
Yeah,
he's
I'm
really fun to talk to.
He is. I'm not trying to be negative about him in any way. I'm just saying that if you feel like you're the type of person, different, like Thomas said, different people like different things. And what we're talking about is matching your goals to the attorney.
Right.
So Pierre's a great attorney if your goals match the way he does things.
Right.
But if your goal is, I'm brand new to this, I need somebody to educate me, I want to be able to make my, I want to be able to
Educate you.
educate. I'm sorry, I put
Educate
I
you.
put
You
it
put
on
the
the wrong
accent on the wrong syllable.
I did. Sorry. If you want somebody that's going to educate you and is going to kind of be more communicative and all that kind of thing, then that type of attorney you're not
Right.
going to be happy with that.
Right.
Because you're not getting what you want out of it.
Yeah. There's also a sense which attorneys, they have a hammer, their legal knowledge, and everything is a nail. So you come to them and you say, I really, my goal is to have an amicable co-parenting relationship. That's my primary goal because I love my kids and I know they should have a father. And this person is citing, Marbury versus Madison. Maybe it's not a good match. And I see that all the time with people that come to me and they're frustrated with their attorney because the attorney's not listening.
Right.
The attorney is taking what they say and fitting it into a box.
Right.
Right. And your goals might be different.
Right.
And also the stage of the litigation. Like at the beginning, a lot of times it's best not to be too aggressive, but to massage things to where you can get before a mediator or get the case resolved.
Right.
Because what good does it do if you spend $100,000 to get 50?
Right. Right. Usually, if you need aggressive litigation, it's best to bring that in towards the
end.
mid to end of the case. Usually, in the very beginning, that level of aggressive litigation is going to kind of blow the top off of everything.
Right.
And you and I have even had experiences like you just talked about where, like, especially like if it's a coaching client or somebody that I'm working with, I'll have an opinion on what I think would be the best thing for them to do in this situation because I know this client. I've talked, I've spent a lot of time with them. I know their goals. I know what they're trying to do. And then Thomas wants to come in and go, oh, but if they do that, then there's a risk of this and there's a risk of that. And there's a risk. And he's worried about legally. I mean, these are not legal clients. They have attorneys and things most of the time. But he's thinking from his legal brain about what all the risks of behaving in that way are. And I'm kind of saying, well, if your main goal is cooperation, then really we should approach it in this way.
Right.
And sometimes, again, a lot of times the family thing and the legal thing are at odds.
Right.
I said this to a mom the other day. I said, look, a lot of times momming and co-parenting are in conflict with each other.
Right.
And in that situation, you really...
Momming and I'm sorry.
Like what you want to do as a mother...
Right.
Or a father, whatever the case may be, as a parent.
Is in conflict with what the court wants to
is
see.
in conflict with how the court wants you to behave towards your co-parent.
Right.
Because you believe thing A is a risk for the child, but or you feel like it's a safety issue, but the court would see that as a safety issue.
Yeah.
So the court wouldn't approve of you trying to control the other parent over that issue.
Right.
And so those two things become in conflict with each other, and it's hard. And I think that's what happens with the family and the legal. And so you really have to look at your family values and how you want to move through this process.
Right. That's true.
And match that with the type of attorney that you're choosing.
Right. And, if your goal is really to just stick it to the other side and make sure that he or she is as miserable as possible, then get a new goal. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not a recipe for happy. Look, if that's what makes you happy, if revenge is that sweet to you, I guess you can go for it.
Yeah.
But the problem is that you're going to dash yourself against this legal system.
Yep.
And you're not going to get the satisfaction you want.
Correct. People
Yeah.
expect different outcomes than what you actually get from court. And, we've talked about this before. Like, I've even had clients in the last 2 weeks. We've had this situation, one with one of my coaching clients and one with one of Thomas's clients actually in court, where they wanted to speak to the court.
Yeah.
And my coaching client has a lawyer. And I said to her, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, don't do it. Most of the time you inadvertently say something that you don't even realize. And then the court hooks onto that and goes, oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, then let me make this order. And then you're reeling. Then you're like, what?
Yeah.
Because that's not what you meant at all.
Yeah.
But that's how the court interpreted, because the court they look at things differently than what a layperson does. That's why we have courts.
Right. I remember this one case. I was in front of Commissioner Radican in North County, and my client is like, I'm arguing the case as a support case, and he's saying,
support case.
Yeah. And he was saying, well, don't forget to tell her that one of these kids is going to drop off soon. And kind of doing this, and I didn't really think it was a good idea, but
you obliged.
I obliged, and I mentioned that, and she went, "Oh, well, we're just going to have to recalculate this thing, aren't we?" And she reran the support calculator, and it came out higher.
Right.
It's like if he'd have kept my mouth, if he'd allowed me to keep my mouth shut,
right,
he'd have gotten a better result.
Right. And you know what? That's what you rely on your attorney for. You rely on your attorney for that experience, that knowledge, that gut from having done this hundreds of times, where they go, and in that moment, if we could have frozen time and just asked Thomas why, he might have even said, I don't know. I just have this feeling like it's not a good idea.
Right.
And so you have to be willing to rely on that attorney's experience and their gut level reaction. And, is it always right 100% of the time? No, not always. I mean, they're human beings. Right. They're not perfect, but definitely it's better than trying to rely on your experience, which is usually zero.
Yeah.
So if you're going to get a better outcome, you have a higher chance with the attorney. And so, again, this comes back to clients wanting to be heard. Yeah. I'll have the client say, well, the judge seemed sympathetic. Well, just because they seemed sympathetic towards what you said and they were kind and they didn't say anything about it because there really wasn't anything legal in it, doesn't mean that their finding's going to be any different.
Right.
It doesn't. And a lot of times what it can do is if you're venting too much, it makes the court think that you're trying to get at the other parent, and they don't like that.
Right. So the lesson from all of this is when you interview that attorney, you want to tell them what your goals are for the litigation. And if they're fighting you on it, that's probably not the attorney for you. In general, I mean, if you're telling them what the law is, that may be something else. But if you're saying, well, look, I really, I know that there's been a lot of, sometimes violence in our relationship, but I don't want to pursue a domestic violence case. And they go, well, you're crazy, because if you file that domestic violence case, you're going to win, and then you're going to have somebody that, you're going to have an advantage in the custody case.
Right.
And that may be legally true, but you might not want to go there.
Right. Right. It's definitely a nuance, and you need to ask questions and you need to interview the attorney. And like I said, you don't want somebody that's just going to agree with every single thing you say and agree with your emotions and be like, oh yeah, we're going to stick it to the other person. But you also don't want a situation where you're fighting with your attorney all the time. Right. So there's a happy medium in there where you find somebody that is, like I said, going to educate you on the process and the law and all the things you need to know to move yourself through the litigation, but also consider your family goals. And, maybe in the beginning you start out trying to work together, trying to be amicable, and it doesn't work out. And then you need to know that this lawyer even if they're going to try to handle things cooperatively, that they're capable and experienced in the litigation to be able to handle that if push comes to shove.
Right. And there's a law firm in San Diego County that their advertising is all about, we're going to clean their clock.
Right.
It seems to be the theme of their advertising, and there's a lot of like brass knuckles and people holding up their wedding ring finger instead of their middle finger, and all the idea that you're pissed off, come to us, we will leave no stone unturned.
Right.
Okay. And some people want that kind of lawyer, but the thing is, what they realize is that advertising is, buying decisions are largely based on emotion.
Right.
So they know that emotion is going to get them cases in the door.
Right.
And then, and having had cases against this law firm, they deliver on that promise. It's
right.
like they are very aggressive.
Right.
And I'm not faulting them for that. There's room in the space for that. But as a general rule, I find that when you hire that kind of law firm, first of all, you spend a lot of money at the very beginning of the case.
Right. Which should be the cheapest time.
Which should be the part where you least need a lawyer.
Right.
Whereas the end of the case where you have to try, if you've exhausted all possibilities of settlement and the court says, well, okay, I'm going to schedule for a 2-day trial.
Then you need an attorney.
Then you need an attorney because right. you're going to have to put on testimony and
right.
you're going to have to get documents admitted into evidence. And there's all these things that we're trained to do in law school
right.
that you're going to need that attorney for. And if you've spent all your money at the beginning of the case,
you're out of resources.
Yeah. You're going to have to just stumble through it.
Yeah. And that's the downside of trying to utilize a DV for leverage in the beginning of the case.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot. I'm not talking about a situation where you really need a DV and you need to be protected from this person. That's a no-brainer. But we see a lot of situations where people try to use that as leverage because they know it helps them in custody or support or whatever. And so they do that, but that's a very expensive
right.
proposition.
This just popped into my head, but it may be a good idea to preserve some of your war chest.
Yeah. In
case you have to go to trial.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
See, I don't listen to her when she's on all I hear when I'm usually working on something and she's in the other room doing coaching and it's like
Are you making fun of me? I don't think
no,
I like that.
No, I'm not. I wouldn't dare.
All right. So we hope this has been helpful. If you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to rate and review us and also subscribe so you get notified as new video or new episodes are released each week. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit like on this video and also subscribe to our channel so you get notified as new videos are released each week. And also, just to remind you, Thomas and I both have free Facebook groups for moms and dads it's a primarily custody.
How much do they have to pay for a free Facebook group?
It's free. The free Facebook group's free. It's for custody.
I'm just curious.
You go to facebook.com/groups/custody for moms is mine and custody for dads is Thomas's. So if you would like to avail yourself of those resources, head on over to the group and sign up. And I think that's it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuniversityonline.com.